Vietnamese accused them not only of taking over the country, but also of stealing supplies meant for the Kampucheans. In diplomatic language, this is known as diversion.
We've had one example of diversion. It was a small one. It was picked up immediately in the case of some rice being unloaded incorrectly in Kampong Song. That was adjusted later on. But in terms of the Vietnamese army living in, say, Kampuchea, we have never had one complaint from anywhere, nor have any of our people. There's been all these allegations. Governments come to say to us and say, our intelligence sources indicate this is always in very general terms. We've said, look, for heaven's sake, will you give us time, date, and place, and we'll follow through. We have never had one response when we've asked that question.
The only factor common to all sides of the coalition is this deep-seated fear of the Vietnamese. Many of these demonstrators will themselves have been victims of the Khmer Rouge, but in exile their suffering is put aside to make common cause against the Vietnamese. Their vehemence may be reinforced by their long distance from their homeland. It is doubtful if many of these émigrés would return to their native land, no matter who came to power. Sihanouk's visit to the United Nations was a great success for the coalition. The other coalition partner, former Prime Minister Sourn, turned up, along with Khieu Samphan, the veteran Khmer Rouge leader. He was head of state during the worst terror of the Khmer Rouge, and claims now that certain mistakes were committed which would not be repeated if he regained power in Phnom Penh. The last time that happened, in April 1975, the American ambassador to Cambodia, John Gunter Dean, had just been evacuated to an American Air Force base in Thailand. Now, 8 years later, thanks to the anti-Vietnamese and anti-Soviet stance of the Reagan administration, Ambassador Dean finds himself shaking hands with Khieu Samphan. But this display of unity cuts no ice in Phnom Penh.
The tripartite coalition government of Sihanouk, Khieu Samphan and Sourn has only been in existence since June 1982. But this formation has not made any difference whatsoever as far as the internal situation in Kampuchea is concerned. On the contrary, the Kampuchean people have increasingly come to agree with our party and the government, which have shown that Sihanouk is equal to Pol Pot, Sourn is equal to Pol Pot. Therefore, the coalition of Sihanouk and Sourn with Pol Pot has clearly indicated this reality to the people. There is another aspect of the problem that I would like to tell you. Since the formation of this coalition government, not only has it not changed anything inside Kampuchea, but it has also caused serious internal instability inside Pol Pot, Sihanouk and Sourn's forces. There are many among their ranks who have since rallied to our side because of this alliance. As we have often said already, the extreme left and the extreme right can never live together.
Sihanouk's visit has certainly put the coalition on the map. More than 100 countries voted for a resolution calling for the withdrawal of Vietnamese troops from Kampuchea, with less than 30 against. The best vote yet for the government in exile. For the foreseeable future, Sihanouk will continue to be fated as the head of a government and a country whose borders he can barely cross, and a government with partners he can scarcely trust.
Perhaps supporting the Khmer Rouge makes sense from a desk in Peking or a desk in Washington or even a desk in Bangkok in their global chess game. But from Kampuchea, it makes no sense.
Have searched the Libyan People's Bureau in St. James's Square. All 70 rooms have been checked, but no explosives have been found.
If they're forced to withdraw within a year or two at most, the very existence of a Cambodian identity could be threatened. That was the message given in London today by the president of one of the leading Cambodian resistance groups, Mr. Sourn, who is also Prime Minister of the Cambodian government in exile. Mr. Sourn sees the Foreign Secretary, Sir Geoffrey Howe, tomorrow, and his visit to London is part of a European tour to persuade the EEC countries to give more support and more humanitarian aid for the beleaguered Cambodian resistance. An exclusive interview with him later on the urgency of Western support. These are the first pictures received in the West of one of the resistance bases against which the Vietnamese forces in Cambodia, or Kampuchea as it's sometimes called, launched their dry season offensive earlier this month. More of those pictures later. All the bases are on the Thai-Cambodian border, and within days in early April, the Chinese, Vietnam's most bitter rivals, launched what looked like diversionary attacks on Vietnam's northern border. For China supports the anti-Vietnamese resistance in Cambodia, a resistance made up of three elements, and challenging the regime based in the Cambodian capital, Phnom Penh. The nominal leader of the Cambodian government is Heng Samrin. 5.5 years ago, he was installed as president when Vietnamese troops overthrew the genocidal Khmer Rouge regime. The United Nations has persistently refused to recognize the Heng Samrin government. That's because it's widely believed that only 160,000 Vietnamese troops and political cadres keep Heng in power. Prince Norodom Sihanouk is the best known of the three figures making up the Cambodian nationalist resistance. From 1954 until 1970, Sihanouk kept his country neutral. He was overthrown in 1970 by a right-wing coup when the Americans judged him to be colluding with the Vietnamese. Pol Pot is the most notorious name among the resistance leaders. He led the far-left regime that seized power in 1975 with Vietnamese backing and carried out a massacre of 2 million opponents. The Khmer Rouge were in turn ousted by the Vietnamese when Chinese backing for the ultra-chauvinistic Khmer Rouge seemed to threaten Vietnam's western borders. Son San is leader of the Khmer People's National Liberation Front. He was a former Prime Minister under Sihanouk and a frequent cabinet minister. After years in exile in Paris, he set up his own resistance group in 1979. All three are in a loose opposition coalition, but function and fight quite separately, united in one thing only, to get rid of the Vietnamese invaders. For centuries, Khmer and Vietnamese have been cultural and political rivals. The less numerous Khmer, the people of Cambodia, have constantly dreaded extinction at the hand of the more thrusting Vietnamese. There's no doubt today, to visitors, that the Vietnamese are once again very numerous and well-favored.
People in Phnom Penh complain about the way in which Vietnamese settlers, for example, have greater legal rights than they, the Cambodians themselves. They say that if a Cambodian catches a Vietnamese thief, he won't dare to report him to the police. They complain that Vietnamese merchants have the best stalls in the market. They complain that Vietnamese fishermen are taking the best fishing spots on the river and on the Great Lake. They complain that Vietnamese officials, advisors behind the scenes, take all the decisions in the government and leave none to the Cambodian officials themselves. And these complaints were striking to me because 2 years ago I hadn't heard them. No one had complained about the Vietnamese in these terms. And now they were. And recently, a rather senior official of the Heng Samrin government defected to Thailand, complaining that he could no longer stand what I think he called the intolerable colonization or colonialism of the Vietnamese.
They want to change the identity of the population in Cambodia. They have bring in Cambodia already about 600,000 of Vietnamese settlers. Most of them are in the south of Phnom Penh. They have occupied the most richest land of Cambodia.
Do you regard this as actual Vietnamese colonization of Cambodia?
Yes, that's a very strong colonization.
The nationalist opponents of this presence lie on the fringes of the Cambodian border with Thailand. Son San's National Liberation Front has its camps mainly in the northwest. The Khmer Rouge, of which Pol Pot is now the military, but not the political leader, are spread around the border perimeter. Prince Sihanouk's forces concentrate in one area alone. But these varied bases allow the opposition to enter Cambodia by many different routes. These are the first pictures of the main National Liberation Front camp to reach the west, taken by the front itself. It's about 40 kilometers inside Cambodia. At a passing out parade for new soldiers, Son San meets his troops, promotes an officer, and generally maintains morale. Apart from being a military base and training camp, Ampil contains 36,000 civilian refugees, making it, as they claim, the largest concentration of free Cambodians in the country. These forces look well equipped and trained. According to a recent eyewitness, the Khmer Rouge are even more obviously well backed and financed.
Well, the camps I visited were the Khmer Rouge camps, and they certainly looked to be very well